On the development question, what happens if Ridgefield is taken over by the state? What does it mean for the people who live there? What does it mean for any development projects that are currently underway?
Well, one of the things in business is you want a sense of stability and a guarantee that when you get your approvals, you can build on them, especially in the current economy, because often the value of land, in fact, the key part of any land is what is it approved to be used for? The bank loan you get is entirely based on what the local municipality has said you're entitled to do there. How many lots are there? So the degree to which it creates anxiety where people have done things legitimately and have gotten subdivisions and approvals, and then there's this monkey wrench thrown in it in a time of uncertain financing already in the commercial paper market, that becomes a problem. But there's a way to do it in certainly a subtler way. For instance, people may not realize Hoboken itself, back to Hudson County, had already had major financial problems where the state was keeping a special eye on it. There's a number of situations, whether it be the Newark School District, wherever, where the state over a period of time has exercised this kind of extra oversight. It doesn't have to paralyze it.
And the Star-Ledger mentions as an example of concern that people have, I guess there's a new high school football field being built in Ridgefield, and people don't want that to get stopped, caught up in the scandal. But can democracy work here? I mean, if there are projects that are unpopular, and we know a lot of development projects around New Jersey as around New York are very unpopular with the people who live there, and they got approved by the powers that be because of corruption, can they now tease out more of those? I mean, the corruption scandal was based on particular instances, allegedly, of this.
They were all hypotheticals and not real cases, too, we might add.
Really?
In this case, yeah. In the case of Mr. Dweck, who was the confidential witness who worked the whole circuit, these were things he came up with that he imagined. So these aren't real projects. But you ask a good question. Can you basically unscramble the omelet? What happens when you find out that there's evidence that the decision-making in a town is compromised? Often the development can go ahead because the development has a certain kind of, if you will, property right. And so you really have to prove that it was the source of corruption and that, to vacate it. I don't know of many cases where that's happened.
I don't know if we have anybody listening from Ridgefield right now, but if you are, you can call in and tell us. Should Governor Corzine, should the state of New Jersey take over your town? 212-433-WNYC if you happen to live in Ridgefield. 212-433-9692.
Also consider that in a lot of cases, people don't think the state's doing a good job managing itself, so it's kind of ironic to have it brought in.
Okay, on to EnCap.
Right.
Now, this is also a development project. As you have reported to us, EnCap was supposed to take $300 million in government loans and subsidies and turn a Meadowlands landfill into a golf course and residential community. Much of the money came through federally backed clean water infrastructure funding, of all things. The state, DEP, and the Economic Development Authority were also key partners. But the FBI has one small question. Why is all the money gone? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think the problem here is that, this started back in 2000. It started at the tail end when the Republicans had the governorship. There was great expectation that, the Meadowlands is about 21,000 acres, that huge natural vast area, but there's 2,400 old landfill legacy toxic waste acres that have to be remediated. Back during the McGreevey administration, they had $50 million set aside to do this work. It was primarily in the towns of Rutherford and Lyndhurst and North Arlington. And then what happened was along comes EnCap, which very close ties to Dakota's Fitzpatrick and Gluck, a very powerful New Jersey firm with great ties to Democrats and Republicans, but primarily to Democrats, and an outfit called Cherokee Partners. They offer what looks like a really great idea. Let's take this liability and turn it into an asset, a rateable. Because remember, in New Jersey, Brian, the one thing we love is ratables. And so
Which
over
means
time,
what again?
That's the ability to tax it, to turn it into something that creates, instead of being a toxic liability, a way that you can raise taxes and get economic development going. Sounds fantastic. Well, as time went on, it became clear that the state was in over its head, that it was making this deal on these 1,300 acres that EnCap had the right to develop, and EnCap fell behind. There were several missed deadlines. This money got spent. No one's really clear what happened to it. And in the process, evidently, there was 1.5 million cubic yards of debris, fill, toxic waste, whatever, that was brought into the site to fill it. And a lot of environmentalists feel at this point that the EPA, the U.S. EPA, is the only body that's independent enough to come in and take a look at it, because the DEP was a central part of the administration of the EnCap project. Now, of course, ironically, people who know their cabinet know that Lisa Jackson is the EPA administrator. She was a DEP commissioner for the last part of this saga in the Corzine administration. So that should be interesting how that evolves.